and welcome to Nutrition Moments. As what we eat impacts our health, our focus on Nutrition Moments is to provide comprehensive information about the food we eat for us to stay healthy. I am Fadila Okunu. First is Nutri News. You're welcome back, and it's still Nutrition Moments. Nigerian meals are loaded with different forms of carbohydrates. What are the healthiest forms of carbohydrates to have in our diets? Catch you on the other side.
Eating a diet rich in carbohydrates is an aspect of our food culture as Nigerians. The varieties of carbohydrates in a typical Nigerian diet include rice, yam, bread, beans, eba, fufu, semolina, semovita, amala, wheat, among others. As one of the main micronutrients found in food, what are carbohydrates and why is it important to our body?
Carbohydrate is considered to be the most vital nutrient our body needs. Carbohydrate is considered as the fuel of the body. It breaks down to glucose. So whatever carbohydrate food source that we have consumed, when it breaks down, the end product is glucose. And that glucose fuels the body, allows the body to do its everyday work, to function properly.
At the chemical level, carbohydrates comprise carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbohydrates are also known as one of the basic components of food, including sugar, starch, and fiber, which are abundantly found in grains, fruits, and milk products. A good knowledge of the different types of carbohydrates and how it is processed and utilized in the body plays an important role in a healthy life.
There are different types of carbohydrates. We can get them in monosaccharide, disaccharides, and polysaccharide. Now, when we're talking about mono, that's when we talk about glucose. Now, the glucose is different from sugar. Glucose is that crystal white, is very soluble in water, that when you take it, it can jump up the sugar level to 100%, as compared to when you talk about honey. Now, in honey, you find fructose, which is also a type of a monosaccharide of carbohydrates. And fruits, they all contain fructose. So now when you're talking about starch, that's considered as a polysaccharide. When you're talking about tapioca and all of that. Almost 80% of our food sources are carbohydrates. When you talk about rice, when you talk about yam, when you talk about potato. But now there are some of it that now contains fiber. So we can divide carbohydrates into the ones that are slow digesting and the ones that are fast digesting. When you take in carbohydrates, there are some that the process of the digestion is supposed to be gradual so that it doesn't spike up the sugar level. But when you talk about a fast digesting carbohydrate, that means immediately you take it in, the body breaks it down almost immediately. And that can lead to a rise in the sugar level. So that's why we always advise that people should take more of the slow digesting carbohydrates, because it takes a bit of time for the body to absorb it. Now, when I talk about digestion, it's not just about when you eat and chew. Chewing of food is different from digestion. So when we eat, we mash on the food and it goes down. But when the body is using it up, when the body wants to utilize it, that's the time we use for as digestion. The ones that are digested slowly are the ones that are whole grain. Whole grain meaning that if you find brown rice, oatmeal, they are types of carbs, but they still contain a percentage of fiber in them. So it takes a while for the body to utilize them.
As important as carbohydrate is to the body, health experts caution on excessive intake. What happens to the body when too much of carbohydrate is eaten?
When you eat too much of carbs, one of the negative things you're going to get from it, you're going to gain weight because your body is not using it up. It's going to store in the body as fat. That's one. It can also lead to high cholesterol if you're having food that contains high carbs. Then another thing is you find out that some people, they finish eating and they realize, oh, I'm very tired, I can't do anything. Yes, they've just consumed an high amount of carbohydrate. Now, let me give an example. In a cup of rice, a cooked rice will give you about 33 grams of carbohydrates. But if you cook a cup of carrots, it will give you about 15 grams of carbs. Someone has eaten and feels too tired, that means the energy is crashed. At first, when the food is consumed, the energy is pumping, but after a period of time, the energy crashes. So that's another way of knowing that the carbohydrate that the person has taken is too much. Then it can also cause dental problems when you're taking too much carbs. Then it can also cause brain fog. You just feel too tired to get things done. Then sugar cravings, you find out that you want to crave for more things. That means the carbohydrate in your body is getting too much.
And the question is, how much carbohydrates should one eat per day?
In a day, our required calorie is dependent from men to women. That means for male, the calorie requirement is different, and for female, the calorie requirement is different. For the age of the person is also different. The physical activity the person is having is also different. So when we talk about having carbohydrate that is too much, you can't consider someone that has a very sedentary lifestyle to eat heavy. So we expect people that are sedentary workers to eat moderate amount of carbohydrate. So in a day, if the total calorie that an individual is placed on is about 2,000 or 2,200, 55 or 50 to 60% of that should be filled with carbohydrates, while the other should be vegetables and the protein. Now, this is a 1 cup of rice. This is called a serving of rice. So when you have this much of rice, then the vegetable should complement the rice. Your protein, which is either the fish or the meat, should complement. Then your fruit, if you can have a bit of fruit also. Just have a balanced diet. You don't just keep having, okay, most times Nigerian homes will always have rice and stew, which is not advisable. We need to have, and when we go for events or when we are in our homes, how many times do we incorporate salad into our meal? It should be almost every time we're having a meal, there should be a side dish or a vegetable, a fruit added to it to make it balanced. We have 3 categories of people. We have the sedentary worker, we have the moderate worker, and the heavy workers. Now, when you're talking to a laborer outside, you can't tell them to eat this cup of rice. Of course, this will not be enough for them depending on their activity level. So they can eat an heavy meal because what they are doing, and the body is going to break it down and they're going to use it because they are using that energy that is gotten from the carbohydrates as a source of fuel for what they do, as compared to a banker that sits down in our office just typing or doing some work. Fine, the work might be tedious, but the activity level is not as high as a laborer. So I would advise a banker to have a slow digesting meal and a small portion of meal instead of having an heavy meal. A daily intake of an individual, it's calculated by calories. So in the calorie, we say out of 100% of that, 50 to 60% should be carbohydrates, while 15 to 20% should be protein. And also the fat should be between 15 and 20 or 25%. So it depends on now the age of the person, the activity level, and the sex. That is what we're using now, breaking it down. So you can't say the protein should be more. The protein is not supposed to be more, because the most important nutrient that the body needs is the carbohydrate, which is what fuels the body. The protein is just it's what we call, it helps to maintain our body tissues. It's just to it's supposed to maintain our body, not supply our body with glucose.
With a goal of reducing the risks of unhealthy weight gain and diseases like type 2 diabetes, the World Health Organization (WHO) has revised its dietary guidelines on carbohydrate intake for adults and children this year. The updated guidelines provides guidance on the intake of carbohydrates to reduce the risks of diet non-communicable diseases in adults and children, with a particular focus on carbohydrate quality. According to the new guidelines, carbohydrate intakes for everyone aged 2 years and older should mainly come from whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and pulses.
Welcome back, and I'm sure you've gained a lot from today's episode of the program. Remember our motto for the program: eat right to stay healthy. See you next week.